Welcome back to the floor of IAE 2952. This is Crusader and Tumbril Day. I'm live here with these wonderful folks. In fact, to clean this up a little bit, do a quick little leave in the party. Boom. And there we go. Nice and clean. These wonderful folks have joined me live here. It is Thanksgiving here in the United States, so it might be a little bit less numbers of people, but we're here to learn a little bit about Crusader and Tumbril. So before we get started, let's give a little bit of a backstory. Let's start with Crusader, since it's most of the ships up here. For Crusader was actually founded in 2799, and it was founded out of a company called Seraphim Systems. Now, Seraphim Systems was an existing shuttle manufacturer that had existed for quite a while. The reason why it kind of became Crusader Industries is because of a man by the name of Auguste Dunlop. Dunlop was an orphan and a rebel who helped overthrow the Mezzers and tried to enact a lot of change that he thought would be a good idea while he was after he helped overthrow the Mezzers. But he realized that you needed money to do a lot of those things, and he didn't have any money. So he used his degree in business to find a struggling manufacturer that he thought he could turn around, Seraphim Systems, and used his own wit and charm to manage to get a hold of the company with some investment money. He turned Seraphim Systems into Crusader Industries through government contracts with things like the Hercules, and also a very extensive range of starliners, which we'll talk about when we talk about the Genesis. Hey, welcome. Go ahead and join us with the tour. We're looking around the floor here. So, in 2850-ish, we have the new CEO of Crusader, Kelly Kaplan, who's the current CEO. She was actually the head designer on the Genesis, which we'll talk about in a moment. That was she took over and managed to negotiate the sale or the purchase of Crusader 2, what we know today is, Stanton 2, which we know today as Crusader, which is the gas giant here in the Stanton system, where they would set up their headquarters. But the secret to Crusader is it's constantly been trying to innovate and change, mostly focused on transport, that they have dipped into a little bit of combat here and there. The main thing that Dunlop wanted to do was he wanted to make sure that the money he earned was not just for his own personal use, but to make the changes that he wanted to see. So it's something like 85 to 90% of all of the profits that Crusader Industries makes goes directly to charity. So they're the most giving organization in the verse right now. With that being said, let's go look at some of these ships. Start with the M2 here, the very first, I should say the oldest currently that we have in the verse Crusader ship. So the M2, his full name is the Crusader Hercules Starlifter M2, or Military 2. The purpose of the M2 is for military transport. This was designed during a time period when the UAE needed to improve its logistics train, to improve some aspects. The one thing that they calculated from the First and Second Tavarn Wars, they'd done a major study at the end of the Mezzer era that determined that the thing that they lacked, the thing that they really needed to do to improve survivability of any kind of ground-type invasions, was the ability to drop heavy armor directly onto the front lines. Now, they tried to, in the past, they would do it with either like one-use big heavy modules that would essentially be fired down at the ground and when land and then just be gone. Very expensive, very time-consuming process. Or smaller troop transports, and then they would secure an area and wait for the heavier ships to come down, mostly just civilian modified ships. That wasn't working. That didn't work well. So they formed a group called Starlift Command, which is an interdepartmental group. It's made up of the military, made of Army, Navy, and Marine Corps folks whose sole job is to maintain vehicles to be on Ready 5 status to go anywhere in the verse at a moment's notice. But they needed a ship to be able to do the things they needed to. So they turned to the market, and they two people entered. The Aegis Dynamics entered, and so did Crusader, which at the time had only really made the Jupiter transport and the Saturn Starliner. So they weren't really known for military contracts. But what they submitted was eventually the Hercules M2, this bespoke, specifically built for the military cargo ship that the military loved. This ship can take a ton of fire. And the thing that you have to learn about Crusader is that Crusader is built off of two things. They're rugged and easy to work on. That's it. They're not very fuel efficient, they're not very fast, they're not very nimble, they usually don't carry a ton of firepower, but they are tough and they are easy to repair. So many pilots love them for that, and it's a pretty beloved transport in the military. Now in 2940, the M2 was put on sale for the public for the first time. But Crusader didn't just release the M2. They had developed a system called the Roll and Go system, which allowed them to build variants of ships on the same assembly lines as ships that are that's the kind of the baselines. So they introduced two new variants of the Hercules, the A2 and the C2. Let's go look at the A2. So this is the A2. This is the a drop ship. It was built with military and with civilian use in mind, but it is designed as a, you know, if you don't have a drop ship, this is a cargo ship and drop ship combination. It has additional guns that can all point down for downward firepower, and it has, if we go up on top here, we'll show you, two bomb deployment systems that take up a little bit more of the cargo. These two hold several bombs that they can drop. I think it's 4 each, or 2 each, total of 4, which allow for an absolute devastating amount of downward firepower if need be. But other than that, it is the same as an M2. You can think of this as an M2 with bombs on it and more guns. So it reduces the amount of cargo space. So typically, I think you can hold up to 3 vehicles in most M2s. So this can only really hold up to 2, and it's only one way in and out. But it is a very devastating tool in the tool belt. From the A2, let's move over to the C2. So this is the C2. It is a stripped down version of the M2. They removed a lot of the armor from the C2, or from the M2. And they removed the crew compartments. So I believe the M2 has some storage bay, so you can like keep the crew of the vehicles that you're supposed to carry with you. They've removed that entirely in this version. So it's a little bit lighter, a little bit less tanky, but it has a lot of cargo space, and it's a little cheaper as a result. So it's kind of a stripped down, cheaper version of a heavy cargo transport, and it can also carry vehicles. Now from this, let's talk a little bit about Tumbril before we move on to the rest of Crusader. Come with me, let's walk. So, here's the deal with Tumbril. Tumbril was founded in 2535, I believe. Let me look at my notes real quickly. (2536) on Saisei. It was founded by a husband and wife team who grew up on Yar. They, the wife was, her parents were caretakers to the University of Saisei research facility on Yar. And the husband's mother was a researcher from the University of Saisei who came down to do research on plants that might be a little bit more, might be more resistant to Yar. Yar is a very, very dangerous planet. It is a massive desert that has these, I think, red sands, which get everywhere, and they kick up these massive dust storms. It's a very inhospitable place to live. But while there, the husband, Aaron, was... trying to find the right names for this, because I can't remember the name of the wife. But the husband, Aaron's mother, didn't come back after going out to go research her plants. And when the sandstorm was coming in, his future wife and his future father-in-law went out to go looking for her in what was known as the, what was it called? It was called the Crossfire Land Cruiser. And this is an old vehicle that they didn't make at the time. It was just effectively an all-terrain vehicle that they had modified to function on Yar's surface. Without that Land Cruiser, his mother would have died. So this kind of brought the two, at the time, teenagers close together. They began to start dating. They began to work together to tinker with the Land Cruiser to kind of keep up to date. They both went off to college. After college, they got married. He got into business. She got into engineering. They had pretty decent jobs. I believe he worked for some engineering or some business firm. She worked for some engineering firm on Saisei. All was good, but they were bored. They were unfulfilled. And when her parents were passing away, they went back to Yar to kind of take care of their stuff, and they ran into the Crossfire again. And it was there that they decided that they were going to risk it all and try to do something together as a couple. And they founded Tumbrilr Land Systems, named after a cart that they had to take away. It's a kind of an old two-wheel trailer that they took apart to build their first vehicle, which was known as the DX-20. Now, we know the DX-20 today as the Cyclone. It was fun, tough, and rugged. Great little buggy, but nobody wanted cars in the age of spaceships. So it didn't do so well. But then the First Tavaran War broke out. And when the First Tavaran War broke out, the Army realizes they needed a ground transport vehicle that could meet their needs. And they found out that the best option was the DX-20. That would lead to many years of the military using Tumbrilr Land Systems vehicles, including this here, the Tumbrilr Nova. Now, this is the hero of the Second Tavaran War, built in 2604. This vehicle was built to replace the Cyclone as the main frontline ground vehicle for the army. It had better armor, big gun, and was more survivable in general. Now, it's most famous for the Battle of Korin Pass, where 3 of these Novas held off an entire massive 1,000-plus Tavaran strike team that had been hidden in the mountains, and they were able to hold them off for 16 hours before relief arrived to push back to the Tavaran. So that's where the Nova made its name. Now, unfortunately, the Tumbrilr itself, as a company, fell out of favor with the Mezrs towards the end of the Mezr era and actually closed its doors in 2860s. So it was actually no longer a company. They stopped making Tumbrilr vehicles until 2941, when an entrepreneur by the name of, Terence Naban, who was a big Tumbrilr fan, realized that the rights were up to sale for it, so he purchased the rights and began to bring back the old Tumbrilr vehicles, starting with the Cyclone. So, thanks to Terence Naban, we start to see some of these back. This itself, the Nova, was reintroduced in 2551, specifically for the military, updated, modernized to help fight the Vandal Wars, and has been sold to the public ever since. Let's go and take a look at the Tumbrilr a little bit, the Nova a little bit. So this gun here is a bespoke size 5. It is built by Hurston Dynamics. It is a specialized size 5 cannon that cannot be used on any other vehicle. It's built for the Nova specifically. The back here is called a energy. This little thing is called an energy missile launcher. It's designed to launch, be able to launch energy rather than missiles, though I don't think it functions currently in game. It's just a missile launcher. There's also 2 size 3 weapon mounts that the commander can use at the top. And on the inside, there's enough space for 3 command seats, control seats, and their equipment. So it's a pretty neat little vehicle. Now, I've also heard a lot of people complain about that this is a very big tank for being a tank, but you also got to remember that the reason why it's so big is because it's designed to fit with Star Citizen specifications. So it needs to be able to walk around inside of it. You can't really crouch and move around like you can in other tanks. So it's a little bit bigger because of that, mostly because of gameplay reasons. But it's heavily based off of modern, I believe, a modern Finnish tank. I believe is what it's heavily based off of. But from the Nova, let's go talk a little bit more about the rest of the Crusaders lineup, which I believe is over here, this way. All right.
Pardon me, I'm using my phone as an internet connection right now.
All right, so here we go. Fault. It's all your fault. Every you heard that at home, folks. It's all Drycon's fault for all of your connection issues. Blame Drycon.
Yep.
I want to see that in the comments. Hashtag blame Drycon. All right, so this is the rest of the offering from Crusader. Let's start over here with the Crusader Mercury Star Runner. Now, the Crusader Mercury Star Runner, we don't really have a date for it when it was built. But we do know it was probably built in the later half. This was probably built during the time period when Crusader was here in Stanton. So the Mercury Star Runner specifically is a data runner and light freighter. It was purposely built as a data runner and light freighter because there isn't a lot of light freighters and or data runners that remain because of the great cargo crisis of the 29th century. At the end of the Mezzer era, there was a lot of the companies that made things like data runners and cargo ships were heavily tied to the Mezzers. So when the Mezzers went down, they also went down. So there wasn't enough companies making ships and ship parts to keep ships running. So many new companies rose out of the ashes, like Crusader, to take advantage of this. So the Crusader, the way that Crusader built and designed and tested and marketed this ship is a little unique. Because it's supposed to be a blockade runner, they wanted to show off how tough and fast it was. So they entered it into a competition known as the Able Baker Challenge. Now, the system of Baker got 2 suns. It's a twin binary star system, and it's absolutely hell on Earth. None of the planets are very habitable. They all have various degrees of bad. One of the planets has acid rain that can chew through starship hulls very quickly. One of them is entirely frozen with massive spikes of ice that stick out of it. It's very difficult to navigate. And one of them is so close to the star that no ship can handle it for very long. So the thing about the Able Baker Challenge is that it changes. Every year it becomes a different route. Sometimes you have to go through the acid clouds. Sometimes you have to thread the needle between the 2 stars. It's never the same every year. It's an underground race. It's not a legal race, but it's done as a kind of an endurance race. The Star Runner was entered not once, but twice and finished both times. Didn't win, but you don't really win the Able Baker Challenge. If you complete it, you win, you've won. And it's, as far as we know, is the only ship to have completed the Able Baker Challenge twice. No other ship that we have in record has been able to do so. So that was its big marketing kind of push for the military and for the civilian markets. But it is also an Inforunner, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But let's come back here and we'll show you why this ship is kind of unique in its own role. So inside we have a cargo right here. So this area can hold a small rover if need be. And there are these side passages. These are mostly for engineering purposes, but if you see here, there is a secret hatch which goes into these underground areas. Now this area is needed for the large data kind of bases above this. This is kind of like a cooling area for that and runs pipes and such. But because of all of the electromagnetic interference that occur because of those systems, this is actually shielded from many sensors. So it has the advantage. Oh, you locked me in. You have the advantage of having a kind of a smuggling hold if you need be. Now, you can also climb out. There's many different places you can climb in and out of in this place. There's also a dedicated scanning place, as we can see here. These are the server racks, which can hold data. Now, it's important to remember that with the data running, I'm going to hop down. Oh. There we go. With data running, why data running is important is because data running is valuable for the Empire. There is no faster-than-light communications in Star Citizen. Every information has to go through relays that have to go through jump points. So there is a lag time in information. You can usually use probes in the relay stations that exist in any system as a means of getting communications out, but it's always faster and safer to hire a courier to carry that information out, which is what ships like the Crusader Mercury Star Runner is designed to do. So this ship is, plus has a little bit of extra bonuses to it. This ship is very valuable for the UE military and civilian population at large. So let's head out. Let's look at the Ares Starfighter. This out. So someone's deployed the satellite dish you can kind of see out here. That's what the scanning ship is designed to do. It actually has a transmit and receive function as well as part of that big scanning, that big thing. Now, probably one of the more controversial ships in the verse, the Ares Starfighter. This was built fairly recently in, I believe, 2950. The Ares Starfighter is a joint work between Bering and Crusader. We call it a ship, but it's more like a flying gun. The one main cannon it has on it is the SF-7 Bering. So this is a version of a size 7, which is designed specifically for the Ares as a anti-capital, anti-large ship sort of weapon. Now, CIG did kind of turn this down, so it's not as effective as it used to be, and so a lot of people are kind of upset about it. But there are two versions of it, the Ion, and over here we have the Ballistic Inferno. Both of which are the first real true combat ships that Crusader has built here for on the floor. Now, from that, let's go look at more of the Tumbril ships and the ships that are more Tumbrilr land vehicles, and more of the ships that are to come in the verse pretty soon. Come with me. All right, so here we go. The very first vehicle that Tumbrilr ever built, the pioneer of all of Tumbrilr ships, Tumbrilr vehicles, the Cyclone. Now, this is the DX-20, aka the Cyclone. The Cyclone is actually its military acronym, or its military name. The original version was called the DX-20, but when it was adopted by the UPE military in the First Tevaran War, they gave it the name Cyclone, which stuck because of its service in the First Tevaran War as a whole. Now, the reason why the Cyclone is so famous and so well loved is because during the First Tevaran War, probably most famously during the Battle of Argonne Ridge, the first Battle of Argonne Ridge, several Cyclones were basically what all stood between a small force of infantry and an entire division of Tevaran tanks. The commander, Colonel, I believe, AJ, pull up my stuff. His name is AJ something. AJ, like, not Kruger, but something like that. The commander was Colonel Crate, AJ Crate, who took his under-equipped, under-trained men and had them hold the ridge overlooking the Tevaran, approaching Tevaran. He goaded the Tevaran into coming in close and used several of these Cyclones, which were converted to have rockets in the back, as miniature artillery pieces. And others which had anti-tank weapons attached to them, simply drove point blank into these tanks and used their better maneuverability to get around them before their turrets could come to bear, and engaged them in almost hand-to-hand combat with the tanks. This tactic worked so well that not only were the Tevaran defeated, but the UPE army, the Colonel Crate managed to capture several Tevaran tanks, which were then brought back to the UE to be studied for weaknesses. This whole thing, on top of that, was recorded by embedded reporters with the military, who then broadcasted this back as a huge propaganda coup for the UPE military, which wasn't doing so well at the time. It also had established the kind of myth of the Cyclone, this rugged, really fun to drive, scrappy little freedom fighter, as it were. So that is effectively what we see here. This is almost the exact same. This is almost the exact same vehicle as what the DX-20 was. This is updated in 2944, I believe, is when this was fully updated. There are still Cyclones that serve in the military. They're exactly like this, only the military Cyclones have a little bit more armor and they have some better control surfaces than this current one. But other than that, it's pretty the same. The typical Cyclone has a driver and a passenger, and this back area is actually a cargo crate. It can hold up 1 SEU of cargo. So now, alongside the Cyclone, there were other Cyclone versions released the same year. These are all modifications of the Cyclone, which are new. These are brand new Cyclone versions that had never existed before. This is the RC. Now, on Frontier Worlds, and of course here in Stanton, there is a popular pastime of racing vehicles, ground vehicles. It's not a very popular thing outside of Frontier Worlds and more rural areas. Things like the Daymar Rally tend to not happen. They're kind of an outlier here in Stanton compared to everywhere else. But in places like Pyro, you see these quite frequently. And because of that, Tumbrilr wanted to try to bring some of that frontier excitement to civilized space, so they developed the RC, a racing Cyclone, which is still used by racers all over the verse. Now this is the Tumbrilr RN. This is your prospector, your salvager, your explorer variant of the Cyclone. This has a upgraded scanning suite and has a way you can deploy probes. So as you drive, you can kind of shoot down probes or beacons into the ground. So if you are, say, establishing a new colony with your Pioneer, well, to use those land beacons, those land claim beacons, you load this baby up with your beacons, then it will deploy those beacons directly into the ground so you can know exactly where to go. You can go quickly and fast, and you can have good scanning range to know where you are. That's the purpose of this one. From here, let's go over to the more military versions of this, or the militarized versions of them. Here we go. We've got the, let's start with this one. This is probably the most interesting one, the AA, the anti-aircraft version. The Cyclone AA is actually a nod to those UPE Army soldiers operating the rockets on the back of during the Battle of Argonne Ridge. This is kind of an homage to that. This is sort of what they would look like. However, those rockets were designed for air to ground or for ground to ground combat. These are air to air, but they can also target ground targets as well. The AA is also equipped with a small EMP device so that if small low-flying ships are trying to strafe you can take them out of the sky pretty quickly. From there, we've got the TR version. Now, this is, again, a light infantry support vehicle which has replaces the back area for a turret, which has a 360-degree horizontal range of movement, and it can support any size 1 gun. It can be swapped out. I don't believe in the game right now it can, but it's planned to be able to swap out the gun for any other kind of gun you want to. Now, then we have the MT. Now, this is basically it's the TR, only they've added missiles to it. So the purpose of the missiles is to turn the Cyclone into more of an anti-tank vehicle. You can think of these three as versions of the Cyclone as used by AJ Crate and his men during the Battle of Argonne Ridge. That's what they're kind of designed around. Now, from all of the vehicles that are already in the verse to the ones that are going to be coming into the verse soon, let's go look at some of the future of these manufacturers. All right. This is the Ranger. We don't have a lot of information on the Ranger. We don't know how old it is, but we do know that the Ranger is a motorcycle. These are the only motorcycles, ground wheel-based motorcycles that exist in the Star Citizen universe. There are 3 current versions in development. There is the CV, there is the CV, I believe the TC or something like that.
CV.
I'm looking at my it's like CV, RC, and TR. So the CV is a courier version. You can carry a little bit of cargo in the back. The RC is the racing version, which is more streamlined, a little bit faster. And then the TR, which is this one, is the combat version, which swaps out most of that flexibility for firepower for some heavy guns onto it. These are size 1s still, but twin size 1s. That's what's on offer for Tumbrilr. Let's look at what Crusader's got coming for us. This is the latest one. We don't know how old this is, but this is the C series. Not C series, the 1 series, I guess you could say. The Spirit. The Spirit has 3 different versions which will be coming out for it, which are the C1, the A1, and the E1. This is a medium to large ship designed to compete around the same level as the Freelancer Cutlass sort of range. The C1 is a small cargo ship, which has, I believe, something like 41 SCU of cargo. 48 SCU of cargo. Then there is the A1, which is a bomber variant, which has 2 5 bomb capacity bomb bays, size 5 bomb bays. And then there's the E1, which is a luxury personal transport, which has up to 6 different cabins for passengers to enjoy. You can think of this as kind of a miniature version of the Hercules. From there, let's go over to the very last one, the Genesis Starliner. Now, there's a little bit of history for the Genesis we have to understand. This was developed by Kelly Kaplan. She is the current CEO of Crusader Industries, and she developed this as a replacement for the old Saturn line. And the reason why this is important is because it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more efficient, but the key to the Genesis is modularity. Now, most places like Meridian Transit, which shuttle people from point to point in the verse, they have a lot of logistical issues because they have often smaller vehicles and larger vehicles, various different types of vehicles that they want to run to cater to as many needs as possible for their clientele. Well, Crusader and Kelly Kaplan realized that if they could make a transport that could serve multiple different roles and be easily configurable, then those companies would only have to buy their product, and they would have replacement parts on the ready, and it would be very easy for them to build. So, but the problem was that building customized versions of a ship is very expensive. That's where Kelly Kaplan came in. She developed the roll and go method for development, which allowed for the assembly lines to build the exact same, to build customized versions of every Genesis. So the Genesis is highly configurable based off of a couple of different modules that you can choose from. So you can buy the base version, which is just a transport, but you can also buy versions that can be configured for military use, converted for mail or freight use. You can buy versions that are converted for a luxury use, for, swap out the number of seats for kind of more dining halls and more luxurious locations. There's even a Genesis that is owned and operated by the Imperator themselves, called Imperator 1, which is custom built using the same techniques for the needs of the Imperator themselves. So that is really what made the Genesis so popular. Many of these transports companies wanted to purchase it because it would make their own logistics trains much cheaper, much easier to maintain. So the Genesis became everywhere. It became ubiquitous with travel. For some time in the late 29th century, people would use the term going on crusade as a euphemism for going on a vacation because of just how often you would see Genesis Starliners everywhere. To this day, they're still very popular and they're still very well loved. This itself in game is likely not going to be what it looks like. It's going to be undergoing a reconcept soon, so it probably won't look exactly like this, much more like the current Spirit model or the Hercules. But this is the kind of the main ship from Crusader that most people would recognize in the verse. You'll see a ton of these once they add things like people transportation moving around. So that is it for the ships here at the floor of IAE 2952. Yeah, that's what we got. Thank you all who are watching this after the fact. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this, hit that follow button here on Twitch. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already done so, because there you can come join us live at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow or Saturday while we wrap up IAE. You can join these folks right here. Get your own personal tour. And remember, if you enjoy this, hit the subscribe button. If you want a more in-depth, kind of more historical look at a lot of these different things, more of the history behind it, a little bit more cleaner, a little bit more succinct, then you can always check out, I do these videos on the Astro Historian as well. This one has just went live at the time of this recording. So you can check that as well. Make sure and if you like the lore aspects, go ahead and subscribe there. I want to know your thoughts on these Crusader and Tumbril vehicles in the comments below. And like I always say, hope to see you someday in the black.